Hello and welcome back. Investing in space is becoming a big business. The space economy is currently worth about $385 billion today, and we are seeing that growth estimates suggest that the stock could grow to between $1 trillion and $3 trillion by 2040. Investors looking to buy into this growth may be considering Rocket Lab. The company conducted its first U.S. launch in January, and that has some investors excited about the possibility of more government contracts. I'm welcoming back Chris Markoch today. Chris, you call Rocket Lab a nice-to-have stock, but not a must-have stock. What do you mean by that? Tell me more.
So today I want to talk to our viewers a little bit about some portfolio strategy. I'm going to make a fantasy football reference, but that comes later. Right now, what I want to bring up is that every investor, or at least many investors, have one or two moonshots in their portfolio. There's nothing wrong with that. These companies are buy for the long haul investments. But one characteristic that many of these companies share is that they're not yet profitable, and that's where Rocket Lab fits in. And the other thing I'm going to be talking about is the fact that there might be some obstacles in the near term that will prevent them from meeting their revenue and or profitability goals.
Right, our viewers are surely going to be interested in what you have to say, Chris, and we'll get right back to Rocket Lab. But first, if you're not already subscribed to our channel, go ahead and do that quick. You'll thank yourself later when you realize how valuable our stock analysis is for your portfolio. All right, let's launch right into this one. Chris, could Rocket Lab be a disappointment to investors?
Well, it's not necessarily that Rocket Lab is going to be a disappointment to investors, but in a nutshell, our federal government's budget is a mess. And that's putting it politely.
Yeah.
I wrote an article recently about Rocket Lab for MarketBeat, and I would encourage investors to go there because I'm not going to get into a lot of the financial numbers right now because that would be pretty boring. But I've sourced a link there from the Congressional Budget Office. What I want to highlight, though, right now is you brought up that Rocket Lab just had their first U.S. launch. And one of the exciting things about the launch is that it was expected to perhaps bring in more money from government contracts. That's where the budget comes in. In my article, I write about three things that are really looking ugly in the budget, which is the amount of our national deficits over the next 10 years, the percentage of the debt held by the public as it refers to GDP, and also how much it's going to cost to service that debt as a percentage of GDP. None of those numbers are looking particularly good. And right now, it does seem, I always caution about saying this time it's different. And I don't question the fact that there could be some creative accounting going on in Washington, D.C. that could kick this can down the road further. But right now, from the sense that I'm getting, the talk seems to be much different. The talk seems to be more urgent, and I think there could be some budget cuts coming. And in one of those areas would be the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, i.e. NASA. And the reason why I think that is because there was an article that I read that said that the Aeronautics Industry Association, i.e. the AIA, has been starting to lobby Congress in January of this year, even before the talk of the debt ceiling started, that was lobbying against having those cuts made to NASA and space-related projects. So that tells me that there is something going on there. And without having clarity on what the federal budget situation is going to be, it might be something that would make me hesitant about investing in Rocket Lab.
All right, you said Rocket Lab was a nice-to-have stock. It sounds more like investors should be selling it fast.
So this is where my fantasy football reference comes in. So if you're looking at your investment portfolio, Rocket Lab fits into maybe this 5 to 10% of your capital investment. It's not going to be a stock that you want to draft in your first round of your fantasy draft. That's where you're going to draft your Christian McCaffreys, your Travis Kelce's, These are the players that you're going to start week in and week out. You're not going to think about it unless they're hurt or they have a bye week. That's not where Rocket Lab fits. Rocket Lab doesn't fit in the middle of your fantasy draft. It fits in the end. This is after you drafted your defense, you drafted your kicker. This is your last pick. That doesn't mean it's a bad pick. It just means that there's a lot more risk involved with Rocket Lab, and you're putting some capital at risk, especially for a stock that, as I've said before, it's not yet profitable. So what if you're the investor that says, I've got a long time horizon, I'm willing to put the capital at risk? Is Rocket Lab a stock to look at? There are worse moonshots out there. Rocket Lab's growing their revenue steadily. Their debt to equity ratio, last time I checked, was around 0.17, which is good. The company doesn't look like they're in any danger of going bankrupt. These are all characteristics that you like to see for a company that is going to take a while to get to profitability. Now, from what I've seen, they're projecting 2025 to be the year when they're going to be profitable. That would probably assume that they're going to get some of these government contracts. If they don't, that could be kicked down the road. And without those government contracts, it's tough for me to see the stock moving from where it is now, which is, last time I checked, was a little bit under $5, trying to double that to get to around $10. And the $10 is a pretty significant number because Kate Stalter wrote an article for MarketBeat, and she brought up this point too. Institutional investors aren't going to get really excited about a stock like Rocket Lab until it shows that it can maintain a share price of over $10. Not going to jump into it. That means a pretty heavy lift for retail investors, especially when I was noticing that short interest in the last month has gone up significantly with Rocket stock. So that suggests to me that there's a lot of investors in there that are trying to short sell, just as other investors are probably trying to buy for the long haul. So there's a lot in flux here. And with the debt ceiling debate not likely to happen until about mid-June, Rocket Labs is a stock I would be staying away from.
All right, great conversation today on Rocket Lab, Chris. Thanks to everyone who tuned in with us. While investing in space may be a hot topic right now, it's important for investors to carefully consider the risks and potential before making any decisions. Rocket Lab may be a nice-to-have stock for those with a long-term outlook and a high tolerance for risk, but it's important to keep in mind the potential impact of government budget cuts on the company's contracts. If you want to continue your analysis on the stock, be sure to utilize MarketBeat's resources we put together for you. Go ahead and check out those links I've included to the articles Chris mentioned below. All right, Chris, is there anything else you have for us today?
I just want to hear from some of the viewers in the comments. Let us know what you think about Rocket Lab. Do you think what I'm saying makes sense? Do you have some other thoughts on it? Again, not saying it's a bad stock, but I don't think it's a stock that belongs in your must-have portfolio right now. Other than that, I think we're good, Laycee.
Perfect. All right. Well, you heard him. Leave us a comment. All right. Thanks again, Chris. We'll chat soon.
Thanks, Laycee.